So the NBA Finals start next week, and for 28 other teams, the offseason's already begun. Because free agency is right around the corner, and this year's class is actually a lot deeper than you think. LeBron, Draymond, and James Harden are all looking for one more contract. But what separates this class isn't just star power, it's drama. Trae Young just got traded, but still might have to pick up his player option. Meanwhile, Austin Reeves has overperformed, but the Lakers may not be able to afford him. And Jalen Duren made his first All-Star team, but his playoff woes may have lost him millions. So that's why today we're revealing one free agent target for every single NBA team. Let's get it. Welcome back to another edition of the Hampton Show. Joel, how are we feeling today?
I'm feeling really good. The Knicks are in the NBA Finals.
Today we were revealing one NBA free agent target for every single team this summer, and afterwards we'll do an NBA Finals preview. First team up, Joel, is the Atlanta Hawks.
They need to bring back CJ McCollum. The Hawks' half-court offense was lackadaisical. In the playoffs, CJ McCollum became the best player because Nickeil Alexander-Walker was struggling to create in the half-court, and so was Jalen Johnson. Those guys probably improve this offseason and get a little bit better at that next year, but they need more of an influx of that creation on their team. So I think CJ McCollum is the guy that needs to come back, but another player that's a free agent is Anthony Simons. And I think Anthony Simons was really good with the Boston Celtics before he got traded to the Chicago Bulls. And he is somebody that could score 20, that could get hot any single night. So I think he'd be a good fit for the Atlanta Hawks.
Yeah, I'm interested for the number for CJ McCollum because, I mean, it was a foregone conclusion once he got traded from Washington. It felt like, man, this might be his last stint in the league or like vet minimum tops this summer. But now it looks like he played his way into some money. And not to mention the Knicks, the last time they lost on April 23rd, it was because of CJ McCollum in both games. So it's funny how the Chicago Bulls have pretty much every guard free agent in the league. Anthony Simons, like you mentioned, and Colin Sexton, like I mentioned. So Bulls actually have a lot of decisions as well. Let's move into the Boston Celtics. The most glaring hole is obviously a big. They need to make a decision on Nikola Vucevic. I think Brook Lopez could be an option if you get him for a cheap price. John Collins is another option. Two Clippers guys that they have to make decisions on, and I think Boston's going to be in the market for both.
Yeah, I agree. The Celtics just need some big man depth. That's what they need. You have Isaiah Hartenstein on the club option for OKC for $28 million. The team option for him, OKC probably doesn't accept it, and that so they can free up space for them. Isaiah Hartenstein is the target for the Boston Celtics. I'm looking at Mitchell Robinson, Robert Williams, just somebody that can protect the rim, that is mobile, that isn't a liability come playoff time. We saw the biggest problem with the Celtics was their big man depth. I think that they are okay at every other spot but that position.
Absolutely, and as time goes on, the Jaylen Brown noise was really white hot as soon as the playoffs ended. I think that'll die down and they'll have a dose of reality. Yes, if you're going to trade Jaylen Brown, it would be right now before the final couple years on that massive $300 million contract. However, the right move, if you cannot pull off a Giannis deal, is to thug it out with Jaylen Brown, an All-NBA guy this year, and you're right, just add a big man. That's their only hole right now. The Brooklyn Nets, the next team on the list. I think this is a team that's going to not really be in the free agency market, but more the trade market for a Kyrie Irving, a trade market for potentially a Ja Morant, especially because if they strike out on Giannis, we know Joe Tsai, their owner, has the tendency to make huge swings, so they will be in the Giannis sweepstakes, but I don't know if Giannis wants to go there. If he doesn't, I think they're going to be desperate to go get a Kyrie or Ja, especially with the lottery luck they had. They're outside of the top five. They got to do something to fill seats because they do not own their first-round pick going into next year.
They have the 6th overall pick. I think that will be a point guard, whether that's Mikael Brown Jr., Darius Acuff, Kingston Flemings. It'll be one of those guys. The Nets feel like a team that needs to take a swing on a restricted free agent. I'm not looking at Jalen Duren because they have a big in Nick Claxton already, but I'm looking at Peyton Watson, a young player who flashed for Denver this past season, who the Nets could definitely overpay to add some talent and somebody with potential to the roster. I'm also looking at Austin Reeves. If there's a team to pry away Austin Reeves from the Lakers and give him a massive offer, it is the Brooklyn Nets. And with the 6th overall pick, let's say they drafted Mikael Brown Jr., Darius Acuff, you have Acuff, Austin Reeves, Porter Jr., and then Nick Claxton. Based on where the league is trending, where you're trying to avoid being the worst team possible, that is not a bad roster to put out there. But I also don't mind them just going for a Peyton Watson too, and you having Claxton, Watson, and PJ, the 6th overall pick, and then you sign somebody else maybe in free agency. So the Nets have a lot of money, and I think that they will make a splash move.
100%. If they add a guy like AR, if they add a guy like Peyton Watson, that feels like a 10 to 12 team. And the entire concept of the league is now changing with these new tanking rules. You don't want to be in the bottom three. Everybody's going to be a lot more competitive. However, the middle, you may see a step back. That's what I think is going to be interesting about these tanking rule changes is what happens to the teams that are 7 and 8. Do they want to fall back into a certain area or potentially lose in the play-in? We shall see. But the one thing we know is you're not going to have a team like Washington losing 27 of their final 28 games, trading for both Anthony Davis and Trae Young, and then those two guys playing a combined 5 games total. That shit's not happening anymore, and I think the Brooklyn Nets act as if or act on the new rules this summer. A team that's close and near and dear to me is the Charlotte Hornets. Their number one needs perimeter defense. If they're going to thug it out and have the same roster, I think Lou Dort makes sense here. A Keon Ellis potentially makes sense here. A Harrison Barnes for the San Antonio Spurs. I also think they're a sneaky Giannis team. I don't know if they're willing to move Brandon Miller and Miles Bridges, but it'd be worth a conversation. Again, Giannis may not want to go there, but they have a lot of young assets that I think the Milwaukee Bucks would be interested in.
Lou Dort is the best available defender in this free agent class. I think he makes the most sense. If they want to add to their identity of shooting, I think Rui Hachimura makes a lot of sense. The Hornets, I think, will be very active in trade negotiations. They have 2 first-round picks in this draft. They have assets for the future as well. They are in a position to make a major upgrade just based on how their season went this past year. So I think the Hornets are definitely a team to look out for. I also wouldn't mind if they just went into next offseason without making a major move and just using their 2 draft picks to fill their roster needs. Because in this draft, there's going to be centers and bigs and defenders available where they're picking. They have 2 picks within the top 20. So I think the Hornets are in a good position to either make a splash via trade or just keep their assets and continue to building this roster.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting how they handle next season as a whole, too. Not only front office-wise, like we're talking about, but internally, because they completely reset expectations in the final 2/3 of the season. We know the start they had. We know how white-hot they got down the stretch and eventually fell in the play-in. But do they feel pressure to cash in, or do they think they're good enough right now to compete in the Eastern Conference? In the Eastern Conference, it's adding the Indiana Pacers back in the mix. That has Detroit. Cleveland, it looks like, is going to run it back. The New York Knicks, obviously. Boston retooling. It's going to be interesting if Charlotte feels that pressure or not. The Chicago Bulls, another team in the East, they need a long-term big. They obviously have enough guards on the roster. Jalen Duren feels like he's really in play in Chicago. Tari Eason potentially. Mitchell Robinson potentially. We also need to talk about what news got announced on him yesterday for the New York Knicks. But a long-term big is the need in Chicago.
Yeah, I'm looking at bigs that are affordable. So Jalen Duren, even though he played himself out of a max contract, I think he's still at least going to get $30 million per year. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at like Mark Williams, somebody who's injury prone, but they can get at a pretty affordable price. The 4th overall pick, to me, it's locked in. It's Caleb Wilson. I think that's going to be the pick that they go with. So with Mataz and Caleb Wilson, they still need a center and they can still use some guards, but they already have Josh Giddey. They traded for Rob Dillingham, so they're probably going to give those guys like more of a chance, especially Giddey. He just got paid. So there's really not a center in the open market for me if I'm Chicago that I'm like thrilled to sign. Isaiah Hartenstein will be at the top of the list just for his defense and veteran presence, but then it drops off with like Vucevic and Nurkic and like Brook Lopez, Mo Wagner, like Ayton. It drops off, and none of the veterans are going to want to go there because they're going to want to ring chase. So they're going to be picking between a pool of like Mark Williams and maybe overpaying Duren, Mitchell Robinson, Rob Williams. So to me, it's Isaiah Hartenstein or bust if I'm Chicago.
And I think another name to throw in the hat would be Kristaps Porzingis. If you're going to draft Caleb Wilson, you're going to want shooting next to him. You and I feel differently about Kristaps Porzingis. I think his best days are long behind him. I don't think he can be a productive starter even in this league anymore. But if the Warriors are going to have any sort of competition re-signing Kristaps, I think Chicago would be a clear answer there. Another team in the East would be the Cleveland Cavaliers. The obvious answer for weeks and weeks on end would have been LeBron James. Brian Windhorst reported this week that he's not willing to take a pay cut to go to Cleveland. That's really not a surprise if you know LeBron's track record with taking pay cuts. He did it one time for LA, saw it didn't work out, and has never done it again. The Cleveland Cavaliers, though, they need to get more athletic on the wing. Jonathan Kuminga could make sense here. I don't think his price tag is going to be outrageous. They're going to have to pay James Harden, so their hands are tied with what they can do unless they want to trade Evan Mobley for Giannis Antetokounmpo. That is a conversation they're going to have.
They're not doing anything in the free agency. They have to re-sign Harden. Donovan Mitchell's extension is going to loom over them in the offseason as well. There's a couple scenarios for them to get better. I don't think it involves free agency. I think it involves trades. One of them is trading Evan Mobley for Giannis. The other one is trading Jared Allen for LeBron James and having a sign and trade where Allen goes to the Lakers and LeBron goes to Cleveland. But then do you keep James Harden at that point? Because I think that LeBron and Harden's play style, it's not going to mesh together. One of them needs the ball. They all need the ball. I mean, all three of them, Mitchell, LeBron, and Harden, all need the ball to be successful. So if LeBron comes, I don't think Harden stays. I think that they try to find a way to build around LeBron, Mitchell, Mobley, and fill out the roster that way. So that's where my mind is at with Cleveland. They're either going to go all in this offseason or blow it up.
Would you trade Evan Mobley for Giannis straight up?
Yeah, of course, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Why?
Because Giannis is a much better player.
Giannis is a much better player, but he hasn't played healthy in the postseason in 3 years.
That's a risk I'm willing to take.
You're willing to take it? A team that was just in the conference finals.
Yes. A team that was just in the conference finals, adding Giannis to the team and like getting better, yes. I'd be more than willing to take that.
Like the Harden trade, it makes you much older again. So you're throwing out you're throwing out Garland, you're throwing out Mobley, and you're riding with a 36-year-old James Harden, a 33-year-old Giannis Antetokounmpo, and a 29-year-old, 30-year-old Donovan Mitchell at that price tag. You couldn't put enough around them where you're going to sell me that they're going to get through a New York or Boston for years to come. I think Cleveland, no matter what move they make, whether it is Giannis or whether it is keeping Evan Mobley or even LeBron James, they are not going to be good enough to beat the beast in the East. New York, Boston, or throw Detroit in there, especially if they make a swing move this summer.
Maybe not. Maybe they will, though. Giannis, even though he's older, he's just as athletic, if not more athletic, than a 25-year-old Evan Mobley. And Cleveland, I mean, this is a team that James Harden only played 30 games with this team, and they made it to the conference finals. They didn't have a full training camp together.
Run it back.
I mean, I don't know if I'm ecstatic to run it back because I think that this core, this nucleus, showed major flaws in it. They need somebody else outside of Mitchell and Harden. Harden cannot be, at 37 years old next season, the second option, at sometimes the number one option. And Donovan Mitchell, I don't think he's a true number one option. So they need a real superstar to come in there, and I think that is Giannis. Evan Mobley has improved a lot in his game, and I think Mobley's a phenomenal player. And if they do decide to blow it up instead of trying to go all in and win, I do believe they should trade Mitchell. They shouldn't re-sign Harden, and they should just have a team around Mobley and start building around him to go about it that way. But if they want Giannis and they want to go all in, then I wouldn't hesitate to trade Evan Mobley.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. They're not going to blow this team up, especially for Evan Mobley. I think if I was a Cavs fan, I was sold in his third year that, okay, he won Defensive Player of the Year. He needs to take an offensive leap, and he has not taken it. I understand why you're saying to go all in and trade for Giannis. What the James Harden trade showed me is that their owner, Dan Gilbert, wants to do the same. So if I'm Milwaukee, would I just be open to trading for Evan Mobley straight up? And it's amazing because people I listen to, the value of Evan Mobley varies more than any other player. You can talk to a media member, and some people think it's blasphemous that you would ever trade Evan Mobley for a 32-year-old Giannis Antetokounmpo. Some people think the other side of that argument as well. One thing I know and one thing that I agree with you is Giannis on that team makes them better. I think where we disagree is I still don't view them as an NBA Finals contender with Giannis on the team.
They probably aren't that. The depth around them is still going to be in question. They still are going to need defenders and better shooters, but it gives them a better chance.
Yeah, and I think the real crux of the situation is having James next to Donovan Mitchell. They were not switchable enough. Their wings were not switchable enough against New York. Max Strus, yes, had great moments, but relying on him and Dean Wade as your primary defenders is not a recipe for success, especially against a Jalen Brunson, especially against a Cade Cunningham, even though they won that series, especially against a fully healthy Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I just think this team made the decision for themselves on trading for James Harden. And that's what happens when you get into the Harden business, Joel. I mean, you know better than anybody.
You overachieve and you go to the conference finals.
You guarantee yourself not to win a title. That's what happens.
You can say that for a lot of players. You know, did the Suns make a mistake trading for Steve Nash because they never won a title?
No, but the rhetoric around Steve Nash was a little bit different than James Harden. I think people can agree James Harden was an overall better player and has had a better career. And with that comes expectations, but the expectations are never met. That's all I'm saying.
Did the Suns make a mistake trading for Chris Paul because they didn't win a title?
You love going after this Chris Paul and Harden thing. You don't like comparing a Harden to a Kevin Durant. You don't like comparing a Harden to a LeBron James, the greats of his generation. You like bringing him down to a Steve Nash, bringing him down to a Chris Paul. That's what you're
bringing him down to a two-time MVP, which only 14 other players in NBA history have done.
Are we going to talk?
Not Harden.
Are we going to talk about Steve Nash's stats that season? Are we going to do that?
I mean, he led
James Harden
historic
changed
offense.
the entire way the game of basketball is played.
Yeah,
I will give him that.
Give him his flowers. Yes.
And yeah, with that comes expectations, and those expectations are literally never met, no matter what team he wears.
The Cavaliers traded for him in the middle of the season, and they made the conference finals.
That trade was with Darius Garland, who had broken down multiple times, like Giannis, like we were talking about. So, yes, I understand why they made it. I'm just saying, whenever you get into the business of James Harden, you will not overachieve and win a championship.
They did overachieve. You didn't think they would make the conference finals.
You know how many people predicted the Cavs-Knicks conference finals coming into this season? You know how many people predicted that?
Did you? What did you say?
I had them losing a nip-tuck series in the second round. Guess what? They went 7 games with the Toronto Raptors.
So
that happened.
They overachieved. They made the conference finals. They overachieved. People thought
you and I
lose
sat
in the first
here,
and second round.
You and I sat here 2 weeks ago and said if Cleveland gets swept, I don't know how good this season really is. I don't know.
In the conference finals?
Yes. Whenever they made the conference finals, I remember sitting here and saying, if they get swept, I don't know what the meaning, and I don't know what they do with Donovan Mitchell going forward. It makes me question everything about them, and now they're getting questioned.
I've been questioning Donovan Mitchell all playoffs long.
But it's never Harden's fault. It's never Harden's fault, no matter where he is.
And it is James Harden's fault. It's not, but he's not the one that you have to make a supermax decision on. Donovan Mitchell is. James Harden.
You have to make a decision on him, though.
But it's on
you
a
had a
hint,
wink, wink to get him to come from L.A. to Cleveland. That
happened. James Harden is much more affordable. And plus, it's much easier to get out of his deal. It's at most a 2-year deal, probably a 1+1 with a team or player option. Donovan Mitchell, it's a 5-year super max deal where he's taking up 35% to 40% of your cap. It's so much different.
Who stepped up in Game 7?
Harden was better than Donovan Mitchell this entire playoff run. He was the Cavaliers' best player. And you can argue that was a problem, part of the problem. That
yes.
He at 36 needed to be the Cavs' best player and lone offensive engine.
You're talking me into the Giannis stuff now. Having that backcourt and then having Giannis behind him. It's just the health thing. That's my only thing for trading for Giannis if I'm Cleveland. I have already dealt with that with Darius Garland breaking down, and it feels like Giannis at his size is not going to be healthy moving forward, but it feels like a gamble you have to take. So I will say you did talk me into that. Moving on, Dallas Mavericks. They need a point guard of the future next to Cooper Flagg that matches the timeline a little bit better than Kyrie Irving. Two names that come to mind. Ayo Dosunmu made himself some money in the postseason. I think they would be in the market for Ayo. Anthony Simons is a name you mentioned for Atlanta. I think Dallas would be in the Anthony Simons market as well.
I think Io, Simons. I'm also looking at Gillespie, Colin Gillespie. He's not Jalen Brunson, of course, but in terms of like a player that most improved player candidate, like from one year to another, Colin Gillespie right now is still going under the radar. Like I think he can be a starting point guard in the league, and he could be very valuable for them. And he is somebody that, I mean, last season you didn't know how impactful he's going to be to the Suns rotation. You thought it was going to be a bench warmer, and he was a legitimate starting level player for them. So
yeah, Gillespie makes sense. How many times do you change out the jersey behind you? Because it went from what, Patrick Mahomes to Jordan Love, right? And now it's back to Jalen Brunson.
Yeah.
It's the Knicks are going to fail, the Knicks are going to fail, the Knicks are going to fail, the Knicks make the finals. Oh, now I can put my favorite team's jersey on the wall. Can you please explain?
Yeah, they made me proud, so I gotta show love. Yeah.
I wonder who came on this podcast from the beginning of the season, and predicted the New York Knicks to be in the NBA Finals. You did it from the beginning of the playoffs. Once you saw the path, once you kind of saw the vision. Obviously, we didn't feel good after Game 3 of the first round. I'm happy for you. And real quick, what's your reaction to the Mitchell Robinson news?
He's going to play through it, so I'm not that worried. But when it first happened, I thought that he could miss some of the finals, which would have been huge. I mean, I don't know. It's random. I don't know when it happened exactly.
I think my reaction is if anybody on the Knicks was going to have a broken finger, I would probably want it to be Mitchell Robinson. All he needs to do is be able to rebound the basketball, dunk the basketball, block shots, be big. It's much better to happen to him than to a Jalen Brunson, than to a Mikal Bridges, than to an OG Anunoby. And if he's playing through it, then I think that's a great thing. And it doesn't change how I feel about the NBA Finals, as you'll see later in this podcast. Let's get back into the Eastern Conference. I guess we'll go West. Denver Nuggets, the next team. You mentioned Peyton Watson earlier. They're going to make a decision on Peyton Watson. Tim Hardaway Jr. is another restricted free agent on their team. This team is stricken of draft assets. They don't have any, and they don't have a lot of money. After what they did last year, obviously they save money, the MPJ thing, but they have a lot of decisions to make because of it.
I think it's over. I think the championship window is closed. They have to make a decision picking between Cam Johnson and Peyton Watson. Cam Johnson gives you great floor spacing. Peyton Watson gives you upside and athleticism. But you are coming off the heels of giving Christian Brown a lot of money because you bet on the athleticism and upside, and he disappointed this year. So they are in a tough position. I don't think this team is going to be good enough defensively or athletically to compete with the top teams in the West for the coming years. They're kind of stuck. I don't see them making any free agent move. Their move is going to be picking between Cam Johnson and Peyton Watson. And part of me thinks that they trade Cam Johnson this summer and they sign Peyton Watson to a long-term deal.
I completely disagree. Whenever you have Nikola Jokic, a multi-time MVP on the team, your window is never closed. I don't know where that came from. I understand that Denver had a rough go in the playoffs. They were by far the most disappointing team in the postseason. However, if you have him on your team, you do everything you can to maximize that window. I think what they should do or what they should not do is try to accomplish what Milwaukee did and give up everything to please Giannis. Number one, Jokic is not that type of player. They don't need to do anything with Jamal Murray. The value of Jamal Murray is not going to match the return of getting better. Jamal Murray on this team, we have seen him win a title with Nikola Jokic. They should not overreact. I still, to this day, don't understand why they methodically put out a statement basically saying by not saying they are willing to trade Jamal Murray. That doesn't help anybody. And Calvin Booth is strict in this franchise. I believe I saw today that they don't have any draft picks, first rounders of the next 6 years of their own. That is a problem. And that is honestly how they have been able to remain competitive with Nikola Jokic. It's by drafting guys like Peyton Watson. It's by drafting Christian Brown and him, earlier in his career playing a huge role. Whether they re-sign Cam Johnson or trade Cam Johnson or not and sign Peyton Watson remains to be seen. However, I'm not going to sit here and write them off because Nikola Jokic is still on the team, Joel.
I will. The Bucks show that you can have an all-time great in Giannis and you can not have a true championship team.
Is Giannis an all-time great? I know in 2021
yes.
That would have been a crazy, crazy thing to ask. But he's won one title. He's won MVPs. But since then, what has he done?
He's just as good as Jokic. Nikola Jokic has 3 MVPs. Giannis has 2 MVPs. He has a Defensive Player of the Year as well. I mean, Giannis is still playing at an elite level. The Denver Nuggets just lost in the first round of the playoffs to an injured Minnesota team.
Giannis has done that for years. Years.
Why is Denver's championship window not closed? Just because they have Jokic? They just had Jokic, and they lost in the first round.
Nobody expected Denver to do what they did last year, and they did it. The mistake that I was wrong about was the Michael Porter Jr. thing. I will finally concede that to you.
Okay.
They needed him. They should not have traded him for Cam Johnson. They did it to save money. I thought it was a smart way to save money, and they got better. I thought it was the best of both worlds. I was completely wrong about that. But if you have enough around Jokic, number one, he's still the best player in the world. And number two, they still can compete. I don't know what the answer is for this team. They don't have draft capital. They don't have assets to go out and get. However, I am not writing this team off. I'm not looking at them as desperate as Milwaukee has been, as going out and trading for Dame and giving up what they gave up, waving and stretching to bring in Miles Turner. They're not at that point yet. And for you to talk about how Jokic gets knocked out of the first round, nobody has said anything about what Giannis has done the last 3 years, and that's get knocked out. Giannis hasn't made it out of the first round in 3 years. That is a thing.
Well, this isn't a Jokic-Giannis thing. It's is Denver's championship window still open? And no, with the current roster construction, it's not. How does Denver get better? They're going to lose Cam Johnson or Peyton Watson. They're going to lose Tim Hardaway Jr., who was top 3 and 6 man of the year voting this past season. How do they get better? They are paying an exorbitant amount of money to Jokic, Jamal Murray, and Aaron Gordon in order for them to get financially well off enough to make moves and actually sign players is by trading Jamal Murray. And like you said, there's nothing that you can get back that makes it worth trading for Jamal Murray. But Jamal Murray has shown in multiple playoff runs already that he struggles against bigger defenders. Jaden McDaniels has locked him up the last 2 matchups they've had in the playoffs. If you can't rely on your second option, who is Jamal Murray, to produce efficient offense in a postseason, then you don't have a chance of winning.
You don't have a chance of winning if Aaron Gordon breaks down every single playoff run. And now they've signed him to a 3-year, $107 million contract extension that kicks in next season at over $30 million per year. I think that's another front office mistake this team has made. However, if they can find any way to get off of that money, I think they will, knowing ownership there. That is the move they make. It's not trading Jamal Murray. It's trying to do anything you can to get off of Aaron Gordon. That's what it is.
So how is this team a team that has a championship window still if they got all these problems?
It's a championship window, Joel. Yes, for years to come, the West is going to look like the OKC Thunder and the San Antonio Spurs. That next tier is always going to be Minnesota and Denver. And once upon a time, OKC was a dynasty. OKC was a dynasty, and now they're in their third 7-game series of the last 2 years. OKC, as great as they are, if they lose Game 7, which we'll know the answer to in less than 24 hours, not everybody's unbeatable. San Antonio's had a perfect health run. They might break down. OKC, you're seeing what happens when Jalen Williams becomes unplayable. I think the biggest story out of Game 6 was not how bad Shea was. It was what the hell is going on with Jalen Williams. He was ruled questionable 45 minutes until tip-off, then got cleared 15 minutes before tip-off, didn't go through the layup lines until the 6 minutes before tip-off, and then went out there, played 10 minutes, and had 1 point, 1 assist, and 1 turnover. That is what needs to be talked about. It's, yes, the Western Conference has 2 juggernauts, but they're not unbeatable, Joel, especially when you have Nikola Jokic.
Denver just lost to a Minnesota team that when Ant was not healthy and playing.
They will make changes. They will make changes.
Not changes that are good enough to actually compete in the West. You're right. There is the second tier is Minnesota and Denver, but Minnesota is clear above Denver. It's not even
No,
close.
they're not. They have moves to make too. Let's talk about Julius Randle and what they're doing. By the way, you act like any team, like Cleveland, for example. The Giannis thing is going to be a lot more complicated. Minnesota is going to be in that thing. I just think there's so much left before this offseason. You're just ruling out teams from being contenders. I don't think that's necessary.
What can Denver do?
Everybody at the time thought besides you, of course, because you're a genius, the Cam Johnson thing, everybody thought that was smart, and nobody saw it coming. I think they will do something smart that nobody sees coming, and they will figure it out. And it's likely moving off of the Aaron Gordon money. That's what it entails. It's not trading Jamal Murray. What Jamal Murray trade is worth it for you, Joel? You admit that it's not worth it, but if you want them to trade Jamal Murray, what do they do in your eyes?
I don't know. That's why I think that they're stuck. I think that the championship window is closed. I think it's over. I don't see them making any move to where it's going to move me or sway me in a direction to where they're actually true contenders again.
And you're saying this after one season.
This is multiple flameouts in the playoffs in a row now.
This isn't multiple flameouts. This has been the first flameout. They lost Game 7 to Minnesota, who went to the conference finals.
They blew a 20-point lead in that game.
Yes, they did. But Cleveland, you give all the credit in the world for beating Toronto in 7 games, beating Detroit in 7 games, and getting swept in the conference finals. The Denver Nuggets have won a championship in the last 3 years, and their window is closed when they still have a top 3 player on earth.
3 years is a long time ago. They flamed out in the playoffs the last 3 times. They did. This one was the most embarrassing.
That's fair. Detroit Pistons, next team on the list. It's another C.J. McCollum team in my eyes. If they can't go out and get a big swing like I know they want to do, if they can bring back Jalen Duren on an affordable contract in his eyes, I think getting a little bit more of a scoring presence off the bench would relieve Cade Cunningham big time.
This is the Austin Reeves destination for me. I was spoken about the sign and trade Duren to the Lakers, Reeves to the Pistons. Maybe that doesn't happen. But I think they need another creator. Austin Reeves does come with his defensive limitations, but I think what he brings offensively is enough to offset that. And now you have another reliable creator and scorer next to Cade Cunningham to alleviate pressure. I think Austin Reeves makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. It'd be at what cost? You brought up the Jalen Duren thing. To me, I don't feel any different about Detroit if they trade Jalen Duren for Austin Reeves. That's a lateral move for me. Again, New York and Boston. I think they need something different than that. And they shouldn't overreact by just moving Jalen Duren by how bad he was in the playoffs. What they should do is keep him, have him as a third option instead of a second option. And whatever that entails, trading for whoever, yeah, Austin Reeves and Cade Cunningham by themselves don't make them a contender. If they can find a way to bring in Austin Reeves next to Jalen Duren, that would be the move in my opinion. Let's move on to the Golden State Warriors. This feels like the last LeBron James place that is still standing. Cleveland news came out. He's not willing to take a pay cut to go there. I think the Golden State Warriors would have a really tough conversation about what they would need to do to bring LeBron James in and pair him up with Steph Curry. I don't know if LeBron would want that for his career. It seems like right now LeBron is leaning towards staying with the Lakers and doing whatever it takes to do that because of his ties there. But if they're not able to get LeBron James, if they're not able to get a Giannis Antetokounmpo, maybe an Anthony Simons is in their price range, but Golden State's another team that doesn't have a lot of options.
They don't. I would bring back Porzingis on a cheap contract. I think fully healthy with Curry, Butler, Draymond, Porzingis. There's something there if you make another trade to bring in somebody else. They're just too old at this point to trust them to be consistent over an 82-game season. So that makes me believe they will be aggressive for Giannis. I don't think what they're going to do is going to be in free agency. I think it's going to be involved in the trade market. And they could use Jimmy Butler's salary to match Giannis's and trade for him and then just send Milwaukee all of their future first-round picks. But now first-round picks become less valuable because of these new tanking rules. So How does Milwaukee feel about their trade offer? That's another question. But I think that's going to be Golden State's big swing this offseason.
Yeah, they're by far the most desperate team in the Giannis sweepstakes, and that's why I think they end up winning that battle, and they bring in Giannis Antetokounmpo. Giannis is going to have to talk himself into going out to the Western Conference. He's been shy to do that, reportedly. He likes Miami. He likes Boston. But playing with Stephen Curry, whenever that gets presented to you, and especially the offer that Milwaukee will have, and most likely Milwaukee will be trying to sell him on that too, I think that's where Giannis ultimately ends up. Do you agree?
No. I think he ends up not with Golden State. I don't think they can make the best offer. I don't like Miami's offer.
I don't either.
I don't love Cleveland's offer.
Evan Mobley to me is not enough. To
be honest, I don't know where he ends up. I just struggle to see Golden State because Golden State doesn't have any real groundbreaking young asset to trade. If OKC loses in 7, I think they jump to the top of the list.
So you don't have an answer. You just don't think it's going to be Golden State.
No, I don't think it's going to be Golden State. I think I would rather the Blazers trade offer because they own the Bucks picks. Yeah. So I would rather the Blazers offer.
That got shut because that was really, really popular to talk about like a month ago, and then Giannis, I think, ended up sneaking around and shutting it down. But yeah, I think Portland's offer would be the best. I just don't think he would want to go there.
And I like the Celtics offer better. If I'm just getting Jaylen Brown and I'm getting picks for that to me is more intriguing than Jimmy Butler in picks. I'd rather Jaylen Brown in picks. Yeah, so
I agree with that. Do you think Boston's willing to do that on their end?
They should. I don't see why not. It's Giannis at the end of the day. Like, it's Giannis and Jason Tatum. I wouldn't hesitate to do that. And the trade is so easy to do. It's right in front of you. It makes sense. You don't have to jump through hula hoops to get it done. I feel like it's the easiest one out there.
Gotcha. All right, let's move on to the Houston Rockets. I think this is another team who's going to be in the trade market for Kyrie Irving. As far as free agency goes, maybe Cam Thomas. They obviously were one of the worst half-court teams in basketball. Cam Thomas would help that coming off the bench.
It's weird because they have to strike a balance of trying to remain somewhat young and athletic, but also they really need a spark at guard. Mm-hmm. They need some playmaking. James Harden fits perfectly with this team. Like, for what they need as a playmaker, sometimes score, like, he fits. But I don't like it. I don't like Harden, Amen, and Şengün and KD. I don't think that's, like, enough in the Western Conference. Anything the Rockets do, I also don't think that they're going to be putting themselves in position to be that competitive where we're viewing them as a true playoff threat. Maybe they're in the Giannis sweepstakes. Maybe they try to trade Şengün as the blue chip piece and picks to go get Giannis. I'm not sure. I mean, Houston, they just need more half-court creation. They need a swing higher. Fred VanVleet's on a player option that he most likely accepts, but they need more scoring, like Anthony Simons. They need James Harden, to CJ McCollum, like Norman Powell. Those type of players that can go and create for themselves, I think, is what they really need.
Yeah, I think Houston is the perfect example of what the Charlotte Hornets should not do. Houston, 1 year ago, were coming off a long first-round exit, a long series with the Golden State Warriors, and they felt good about themselves going into the future. It felt like they were in the running for Giannis. If they stayed the same, they would be fine. But then they pulled the trigger on Kevin Durant, speed up their timeline, and just like James Harden, with Kevin Durant comes expectations, and outside of Golden State, those expectations with Kevin Durant have not been met. And I agree with you, Joel. As far as what they do from here, there's not a lot of answers, but KD, and as crazy as it sounds because the internet is not real, in a locker room it is. What he did in those Twitter files did affect that locker room, and you cannot tell me it did not. What was said about Alperen Şengün, what was said about his teammates, Jabari Smith Jr., they need a change, and I don't know what that is because bringing Fred VanVleet back by itself is not nearly enough.
I agree. Bringing Fred back, bringing Adams back, they still need somebody else. They need more offensive creation. So we'll see what they do, but it's not that many options.
Yeah, real quick, we'll run through these next two. Pacers, I put, Bogdanovich, Harrison Barnes, just some type of shooting off the bench. Clippers, I was going to put Walker Kessler on here, but obviously the report's saying he's re-signing with for a large number with the Utah Jazz. They probably need to retain John Collins. Not many options here. Pacers and Clippers don't really have a lot of options. Grizzlies, they're just going to go all in on their draft pick and get younger. Maybe a Jonathan Kuminga just to get more athletic on the wing. But Pacers, Clippers, and Grizzlies, any names stand out for those three teams for you?
No, those teams seem pretty set on the direction they're going in.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Grizzlies' improvement is going to come through the draft and being healthy next year. I think most of those teams, there's really not much out there for them.
Yeah, and another team that you can throw in here is the Miami Heat. Basically, their decision is going to be made internally on Norman Powell or Andrew Wiggins. Obviously, they're going to be leading the Giannis sweepstakes as well. Their improvements are going to get better on the trade market instead of free agency. The LA Lakers, you've long said Jalen Duren would be a perfect fit here. Would you do it for Austin Reeves? Your answer is yes. My answer is no for that. If they don't pay Rui Hachimura, I think this is another Peyton Watson landing spot for them. You obviously want to sign Austin Reeves, but if you choose not to pay Rui, I think Peyton Watson will get a similar number.
The Lakers offseason is tough because LeBron, Rui, and Reeves are all free agents, and you want to bring back all of them because I don't think that the Lakers are that far off with bringing those guys back and just adding a real center to the team. If they do that, I think that they can be competitive in the West, but you need the money, and if all your money's going to those three, then now you're not building a roster catered to Luka the way that it should be. So it's going to be interesting what they do. I think that they should try to do whatever they can to bring back Reeves, or if not, sign and trade him for somebody else. Rui should come back for how valuable his floor spacing is, and LeBron is also another piece you can dangle and maybe a potential sign and trade. Yeah. So the Lakers, I don't know what they're going to do, but they have a lot of money. They have a blank slate, and we'll see how the roster looks like at the end of free agency.
This seems like a recipe for a very, very ugly ending for LeBron James in LA. They have made it clear that he is one of the last priorities on the list. He is a priority. They want to retain him. But the reality is he's not going to be anywhere near the top of the to-do list going into this offseason. Austin Reeves will be on the top of that list. Rui Hachimura likely would be second on that list. And bringing in a big would be just as important as re-signing Austin Reeves. LeBron James is going to fall beneath all three of those things. And if he's not willing to take a pay cut to go to Cleveland, he may have to take a pay cut to go to LA, because if they're paying Austin Reeves, if they're paying Rui Hachimura or Peyton Watson, they're not going to be able to pay LeBron James. That's just the reality of it.
Exactly, unless they go over the luxury tax, and that comes with its own problems. So, yeah, no, the Lakers, they have a decision to make, because are you going to bank on one more year of the LeBron-Luka Reeves pairing, or do you just say this is a year we're going all in on Luka? This is his time. We're going to build this roster around him. So we'll see what they do.
And I think the decision will ultimately come to LeBron James, because I believe them at face value. They do want to retain him. They're not going to save money to do that. They're going to do everything we just talked about before that, and that's where the decision comes down. Is LeBron threatened by that? Does he think there's more money elsewhere? Because the reality is there's not, and I'm just interested to see if there's going to be an ugly ending to it. Milwaukee Bucks, obvious, just get as much as you can for Giannis. Minnesota Timberwolves would be to bring back Ayo Dosunmu. Another CJ McCollum team, potentially as well. Luke Kennard, maybe to add shooting. But I think the majority of Minnesota's work, like a lot of teams, are going to be in the trade market. What do they get for Julius Randle? And Kyrie Irving's another guy to watch out for Minnesota trading for.
I agree.
New Orleans Pelicans, another team that seems like they made a decision on Zion. Their GM came out and said that they want to keep him. I don't know why, with the track record of what has been Zion Williamson's tenure with the New Orleans Pelicans. They've made the playoffs one time. Zion didn't even play in that series. He's yet to play a playoff game. It's not a knock on Zion. It's just the reality of what can you do from here. Nothing the Pelicans have done over the last 7 years have made any sense, and I don't expect them to have a good offseason. You can write down some big man names, Chuck Landell, I don't know, Kristaps Porzingis, whatever you want to say, but that doesn't change how I feel about the Pelicans at all, and that's a team that I believe will end up in the relegation zone.
They have talent. It's just, I don't know, man. Maybe Jamal Moses is going to instill something different with this team, but I just think that it's a lot of odd fits, and I don't really believe in the direction they're going in.
Yeah. New York Knicks, your team, going to be in the NBA Finals. Obviously, not a lot of moves to make. I think the thing to do would be to let Jose Alvarado walk, bring in a guy like Bones Highland that can give you a little bit more size there as a third point guard, really.
It's hard to say what they need without seeing the team lose yet.
Exactly.
Yeah. They're on an 11-game win streak. They don't need anything right now. So we'll see how the NBA Finals goes to like evaluate this team and what the weakness was exactly. But right now they're good.
Yeah, same with the OKC Thunder. If they lose Game 7, I agree with you. I think everything's on the table, including Giannis. Orlando Magic, this is an easy fix. They need more shooting. A guy like Kevin Huerter would be a great signing for them.
Yeah, I think it'd be good.
All right, Philadelphia 76ers, Kelly Oubre Jr., keeping him. He played a big role down the stretch. They don't have a lot of money. They're going to be under new management, front office management. Interested to see what philosophy changes they make. The Phoenix Suns, a guy's name you brought up was Con Gillespie. Mark Williams is also a free agent. If they can't retain Mark Williams, I guess you could fall back to a guy like Jackson Hayes, but I think they'd want to keep some of the same guys there. It's just a matter of how happy will they be having a very similar season, a lateral season, or even maybe a step back going into next season. I'm interested to see how patient that new owner can be.
Yeah, I mean, right now, being mid is actually the best way possible to
That's fair.
getting a better pick. So
Yep.
It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, but yeah, I don't even know if the Suns own the first round picks or what the first round pick situation is like. Mm-hmm. So it does, for them, they're gonna probably take a swing, but I don't think it's gonna be a big one. Matt Ishbia already took swings that were massive early on when he first owned the team. I think he learned from that, and now he's just trusting internal development.
Yeah, and the Ja Morant thing with the new rules, it feels like they'd be a little less desperate to make a move like that. If you want to make a case, the Ja haters, which, most people have turned against Ja now, even if you add him to the team, how likely is it that you end up somewhere between 9 and 12? I still think it'd be pretty likely with how many games he misses. So I think no matter what they do, they'll probably fall in the same range. Portland Trailblazers, I like Anthony Simon's return there.
To me, for them, I think they're good with what they have. It's really about if they're going to want to trade for Giannis or not. Mm-hmm. But that's it. I don't think that there's like any other move for them to make. Their big move is going to be just getting Dame to return, and he's going to fill up a lot of minutes next year.
Absolutely. Sacramento Kings, I literally wrote, it doesn't matter. I don't know a move for them to make. San Antonio Spurs, if the Lakers choose not to pay Rui and bring in a guy like Peyton Watson, I think Rui Hachimura would be on the table for the San Antonio Spurs. He adds to their identity of having positional length at pretty much everywhere you look, and I think Rui would be a perfect fit in San Antonio. Toronto Raptors, just put shooters on there, Kevin Huerter, Luke Kennard. And then the final two, Utah Jazz, is keep Walker Kessler, which it looks like they're going to do. And Landry Shamet's a guy who's made money, especially in the conference finals, shooting 11 of 12 from three. I like bringing in a veteran like Landry Shamet. This is going to be the first season for Utah. They're going to try to win in a long, long time, and I think Landry Shamet would be a good guy to have in that locker room. Washington Wizards, if you move on from Anthony Davis, I guess Mitchell Robinson, Day'Ron Sharpe, whatever, a big for them. But anything come to mind for the Spurs, Raptors, Jazz, or Wizards, Joel?
For the Spurs, it's a backup center. I know they have Luke Cornett, but the non-Wemby minutes have killed the Spurs in the playoffs. And I feel like it's in large part due to after Cornett, you have Kelly Olynyk and Bismack Biyombo, who are unplayable in the playoffs. And Cornett hasn't been the best backup center in the playoffs either. So I think they could add more big man depth so they can give Wemby more rest and they still have viable defensive lineups out there because their defense just drops off a cliff when Wemby's not on the floor.
Absolutely. I agree with you. They do need backup depth. You can throw in Day'Ron Sharpe, whatever. But let's move into the NBA Finals preview. We're going to start with Thunder Knicks, and if you're watching this after Game 7 on Saturday, you can skip ahead because we're going to do Spurs Knicks as well. This is the way I view if the matchup is Thunder versus Knicks, the Knicks should not be an underdog. I checked every single sports book, and no matter where you look, the hypothetical odds for this series, they are not favored to win this series. Mikal Bridges has shot almost 60% in the postseason. Landry Shamet has shot 92% from three in the conference finals. My question for New York is this a magical season or is it a magical stretch? History shows that those numbers are going to come back to earth, so they're going to have to win in multiple different ways. The beautiful thing about this New York team is they have proved that. You can point to the 22-point comeback. You can point to games where Brunson has backpacked this team. You can point to games where Karl-Anthony Towns has played a crucial role as an offensive hub. The Thunder are beat up. They have went through the series with the San Antonio Spurs, but I don't think that alone is going to be why the New York Knicks win this series. The Knicks have something that San Antonio does not, and that is a closer. They have a closer to match Shea in crunch time. The matchups, diving into that, I think are going to be very interesting. Is Alex Caruso on Brunson? Is Lou Dort on Brunson? Do they put Mikal Bridges or Josh Hart on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? You would assume Chet would be on Karl-Anthony Towns. Who's going to be guarding Chet? Is it OG? Is it Cat? The number one thing to watch in this series would be how the New York Knicks handle the two big lineups that OKC loves to run out, Hartenstein and Chet. Mitchell Robinson is going to be banged up. He has a broken finger. How playable is he? How many minutes does he play next to Karl-Anthony Towns? I have the Knicks winning this series in 7. OKC's tank is on E. The Knicks are not only fresh, but they are healthy. They have a closer, like I said, that matches Shea. And up to this point, all the pressure has been on New York. They were expected to win the first round. They were expected to win the second round. They were expected to win the conference finals. And now that they're in the NBA finals, they're the underdog. They're the hottest team in the history of the NBA, and somehow they can still play with a chip on their shoulder. They can still play as an underdog in the NBA finals, and that is why I have them winning this series in 7 games.
Through the first 14 games of the postseason, the Knicks have the best point differential in NBA history in the playoffs. They are above the 2017 Warriors. Now, that can speak to them being this all-time team. I mean, all the numbers would suggest this is an all-time run that they're going on. Some people are not buying it completely because of the opponent factor. The Hawks, the Sixers, the Cavaliers, most people are unimpressed with those teams. But nonetheless, the Knicks aren't just getting by them. They're completely dominating them. They're showing they're in a different class. With San Antonio, the matchup is interesting because Wemby's presence basically takes away all cuts to the basket. A lot of the off-ball movement and the Karl-Anthony Towns as an offensive hub is reliant on the backdoor cuts to the basket, and with someone like Wemby, those are just not going to be available. So that's something that the Knicks are going to have to move away from, and they're going to have to play a more perimeter-oriented style of offense where they're not trying to get downhill, but they're trying to make outside perimeter shots. And they have been hot from 3. Everybody's been playing well. They're shooting the ball well. Mikal Bridges has gained a lot of confidence. OG Anunoby has been averaging 20 in these playoffs. So I think that the Knicks offensively have enough diversity and answers to combat anything that OKC and San Antonio has to throw on them. They're going to get tested the most defensively. They're going to want to hunt Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns. Regardless of the series, those two guys are going to always be at the forefront of how they get targeted on defense. But that's why I've been really impressed with how the Knicks have guarded this postseason. OG Anunoby has done a great job helping out in gaps, and Jalen Brunson has showed a lot of effort in showing and recovering so he doesn't get left on islands with players that pose matchup advantages against him. The Knicks, Mike Brown has completely brought in a new defensive and offensive philosophy, and I think that the answers that he has brought to the team are enough to answer any problem that the Spurs or OKC might pose. So I'm going to go with the Knicks winning the NBA championship. It doesn't really matter who it's against, OKC or the Spurs. I just think that the Knicks are on their level, and Jalen Brunson rises to a historic playoff performer. Right now, if you were to ask me, who do I think is a better playoff performer, Jalen Brunson with the Knicks or Shea with OKC, I'd go with Jalen Brunson with the Knicks. I think Jalen Brunson has played better in the playoffs than Shea over the past 3 seasons.
I completely agree. And to the naysayers who do point at who they have played up to this point, like you said, the Hawks, the 76ers, the Cavaliers, the difference between this team that has had an easy run and Everyone else who has had an easy run is the point differential. They have a much larger point differential than even the 2017 Golden State Warriors, who started and finished 15-1 in the postseason. The Knicks have annihilated teams, and I'm not sitting here saying that they're going to do this to OKC. However, whenever you go through a war that the Thunder have just went through, it takes a toll. And I can make an argument and say that the Knicks match up better against OKC than they do Victor Wembanyama, especially with the Mitchell Robinson injury. Yes, he's going to play through it, but a broken finger is something serious. And if you had to face a Victor Wembanyama, that would be a lot different than having to go out and guard Chet on the perimeter or Isaiah Hartenstein in the mid-range and doing his float game. But, yeah, I think you and I agree. Do you envision it being 7 games as well?
I do. I think it's going to be a tough series for both teams, and I think it does go the distance.
Yep, I agree. Before we move on, you live in Jersey. You have grown up your entire life as a New York Knicks fan. I have not. What is it like in that city? What is it like talking to all your friends that you grew up with that are Knicks fans? What has that experience been like for you?
They're pretty excited. I don't really get the experience being from New Jersey, but you just see the videos online of everybody in New York, and everybody's outside. You see people walking around with Knicks shirts on. It seems like people are just extremely proud of the team that they're putting out there, and this team has given people faith to believe in them winning a championship this year. Like, my cousin all year long has not been on the train of like the Knicks are going to win it all. But after each series has gone on, he's like, you know what? I think this year we actually like really have a chance. Like, this can happen. So the team with their play has given people hope that this could be the year that they finally end the championship drought. Last time they won was in 1973.
And last time they went there was 99, and this will be by far the hardest, not just because of the opponent. It's game one's not in Madison Square Garden. They have to go on the road. They're going to have to win this series on the road, and I think they're good enough to do so. Let's pivot to the Spurs Knicks version of this. Like the Thunder, I don't think the Knicks should be an underdog to the San Antonio Spurs. Before Game 7, they were plus money against the San Antonio Spurs, just like they would have been against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Not having Mitchell Robinson hurts in this series much more than it would have against OKC. De'Aaron Fox on the other side of this is banged up too, though. Stephon Castle has struggled with turnovers, 20 turnovers in the first 2 games of the Western Conference Finals. And Dylan Harper, as good as he's been, he has been inconsistent. He has looked like a young guy at times. I'm not saying that the future of the Spurs is going to look like this, but they're just as banged up, if not more, than the New York Knicks. I trust the Knicks role players more than I trust the others on the San Antonio Spurs. I know that, especially at this point with what we've seen Mikal Bridges in this postseason, he will show up. I know that Karl Anthony Towns, no matter how many silly fouls he has, with this version of Mike Brown's offense, he will show up and play whatever role is asked of him. I don't think De'Aaron Fox is like that, especially after watching 6 games of the conference finals. He is not the same guy. And Stephon Castle and Dylan Harper, yes, I think have the potential to be future Hall of Famers, but they're not ready for this, and they have proven that despite making the NBA Finals.
The most important thing is San Antonio is taking care of the ball. They can get out in transition, and they really make you pay. Dylan Harper has been one of the most impressive rookies in the postseason that I've seen in a long time. He is not unfazed by the moment. He gets downhill at will. The jump shot still hasn't come along yet, but when you can get to the basket that effortlessly, it puts a lot of stress on the defense. And De'Aaron Fox, you're right, he hasn't been himself. He's been playing through an injury, and he's not been anywhere near his all-star level regular season self. Stephon Castle, I think, is the X factor in the series. The same way that San Antonio has completely sold out in moments to guard Shea is how I believe they're going to guard Brunson. And Stephon Castle is going to get that matchup on Jalen Brunson. And Stephon Castle is athletic, he's long, he's physical. That's going to be a tough matchup. And I think that, the Knicks, they need Brunson to play at a very high level, at an elite level. And the Spurs have an answer for that with the perimeter defense and with having a rim protector behind them like Victor Wembanyama. So it's going to be a tough matchup overall. And the Spurs, they don't have the advantage of rest that the Knicks have. I don't think they have the advantage of depth that the Knicks have. There are things that favor the Knicks, but there are also things that favor the San Antonio Spurs as well. So I think with this matchup, it just comes down to can your stars live up to the moment? With Jalen Brunson, Stephon Castle is an excellent defender, but Jalen Brunson has shown in the past that he can get his game off against Asar Thompson, who I think is an even better defender than Stephon Castle. So if Jalen Brunson can continue doing what he does, I think that we have enough around him to beat San Antonio. San Antonio has Wemby. The Spurs fall off when Wemby's not on the floor. That's something they have to look out for. And then we don't know what we're getting from Fox, Harper, and Castle. Those feel like wild cards on a game-to-game basis versus like sure things.
Yeah, and not to mention, Wemby at times has looked like fatigue has affected him. It's weird because whenever they have 2 nights in between games, it's like he comes out a little bit flat. Whenever the moment gets bigger, he seems to wind up getting bigger. But it comes down to what I talked about. It's who do I trust in the supporting cast more? And the answer is the New York Knicks. And another funny thing about this, if you would have asked Knicks fans, I'm sure if I would have asked you before the conference finals, you would have much rather played the San Antonio Spurs than the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think afterwards it has flipped, not only because of the Mitchell Robinson injury, and you're going to need him to throw as many big bodies against Victor Wembanyama as you can, but with what they exposed in guarding Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Brunson, he's going to have to solve that. But the difference in Jalen Brunson is he has seen stuff like this before. It might take him 2 games to figure it out, but Jalen Brunson will eventually figure you out, and that's why I have the Knicks winning in 7 games as well. All right. Joel, appreciate you taking the time today and looking forward to next week, bro.
Thank you so much, bro.